Welcome to another edition of the Radio Coffee House Show, where Jesus meets coffee meets talk radio. And the next one starts right now. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Clint Armitage with the Radio Coffee House. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for listening in. So, if you have been listening and wondering why I abruptly disappeared for the last 3 weeks, in this next episode, which I entitled Hospital Chronicles, we are going to get into it. I'm going to break down everything that happened, give you all the details, and you're kind of getting a hint because it's named Hospital Chronicles. But you're going to hear what God has been doing throughout this, I don't even want to call it a trial, but it's been something that has changed the path and change some things in my life, and so I'm going to get into that in this episode. So let's do this. Okay, what's up, everybody? Again, it's Clint Armitage. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for listening into the Radio Coffee House. This show, just like I told you in the intro, is called Hospital Chronicles. So this is what has been going on. I'm going to break it down to you from the beginning and walk you all the way through until right now, today, present day. So the last 3 weeks, I abruptly disappeared. You guys heard nothing. You didn't hear any episodes. I didn't say anything. And that's because what had happened was I had an emergency medical issue come up. So this is how it all started. Oh, and by the way, I'm recording outside of an infusion center, a medical infusion center, which I have to go to daily now. And so, again, things have changed up, and now I'm not in the studio. I'm actually in the parking lot recording this episode right now. So let's start from the beginning. So it was a few weeks back, even a couple months back. Well, I don't even know if months, but at least a month back, where I was doing a training. I was training a law enforcement agency. I was teaching their whole department active shooter type of drills and exercises. So it was live fire active shooter. Anyways, it was about 100 degrees, 100 plus degrees, and we were going for about 8 hours or so. And I felt really fatigued, which was not really normal, but I was really beat. Like I couldn't even stand up straight necessarily. I was putting my hands on my knees and I was really tired. Now I've experienced that before in other, days where it's hot weather and I've been working hard and running up and down. Cause again, active shooter, you're really, you're sprinting and you're trying to get to the threat and all that. And so, yeah, I've experienced it before, but this time was a little bit different. I was tired maybe after only about 4.5 to 5 hours, and I felt really tired. I was putting my hands on my knees and kind of resting between exercises and drills and all that. And then I just felt really tired. And the chief even said, hey, you know what, Clint, why don't my guys help you pack up and so you don't have to do anything, just kind of rest. Because he noticed that I was a little bit more fatigued than I probably should have been in that situation. But either way, so that happened and we packed up, I left the training and it was in Southern California. So I had to stay the night down in Southern California and leave the next day to go back up to the Reno area. And so anyways, I went ahead and left the next day. And when I left, I was driving up 395 in San Bernardino and I made a stop at AM, PM or something. And I went in, got something to eat, got something to drink, got gas. And then I felt my heart do something weird. Like it was not really beating right. And then also I couldn't breathe all that well. Like I could breathe, but it was something like hindering. So I knew there was an issue. And I thought, that's weird. So anyways, I ended up driving back and it was, 8 to 10 hours or whatever was the drive. I got back home and then I was still feeling the same. Like it didn't get any worse, but it didn't get any better either. And so I just said, well, let me rest it off and see if it goes away, if it's a acute thing or whatever, before I take action on it. And so anyways, 3 days went by and it didn't change. Like, again, it didn't get any worse, but it didn't get any better either. And so after 3 days, I thought, well, I wonder, I didn't know what it was, but I wasn't really motivated to go to the hospital or urgent care or anything to see what it really was. So anyways, I sat on it until the 4th day. And then the 4th morning, what happened was my jaw started to swell. And I thought, okay, wait a minute. This is weird. First my heart, now my jaw's swelling. And I thought, this is not right. So that's what kind of made me think, I better get to the hospital or whatever. So I showed up at a hospital and they did a battery of tests. They did all kinds of tests and they said, hey, something's wrong with your heart. And as a matter of fact, they were talking like life or death. They were talking, one of the cardiologists said, hey, just to let you know, or maybe he wasn't a cardiologist, could have just been an ER doctor. But he said, hey, if you would have waited a few more days, this could have been really bad. So what's going on is they did an echocardiogram, and they determined that I had infective endocarditis. And what that is what it is somehow a bacteria was introduced to my bloodstream, and the bacteria attached to two of my valves. Okay, the mitral valve, it's two valves on the left side of the heart. The mitral valve and the atrial valve, I think those are what they're called. So anyways, bacteria attached to both of those valves, and it began eating away at those valves. So what happened was the valves no longer worked, because those valves are one-way valves, right? The heart pumps the blood out, and then the valve is supposed to close. Both of these valves are supposed to close, and then when they close, no blood comes back in, right? Well, my valves were failing. And so they determined it was heart failure, valve failure, but the diagnosis is heart failure. And these two valves were allowing a ton of backflow of blood back into the heart every time it pumped. So obviously it wasn't working correctly. And so my heart was failing per their diagnosis. And so they were setting up to get me to, this wasn't a hospital that had a surgical center. So they were trying to set up to get me to a surgical center in Sacramento and that area there. And so they were calling around trying to do all that. And so what happened was they said, hey, we might have to fly you out. So, I mean, obviously they were thinking like it wasn't a good thing. They were actually surprised at the fact that I didn't have shortness of breath. They were surprised that I was able to talk, for long periods of time without actually having an issue breathing. I was able to move around, sit up. I wasn't just laying down, So they were kind of interested. They were thinking it was interesting that it wasn't affecting me as much as it probably should have been because of all the backflow. I guess these valves were totally failing and they were flapping, and so a lot of backflow was happening. And so the activity I was actually able to do without having shortness of breath was a little bit interesting to them because they thought I should have had trouble breathing. So anyways, that day, because I went in at like 10 a.m. in the morning or something like that. And so they determined this pretty quick, and they were trying to get me a bed at another hospital. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what they do. So they were trying to get a bed, and it was literally like 12 hours later. So what was happening was these other surgical centers were not getting back to them, and it didn't seem to be that I was a priority because I wasn't a patient of these surgical centers. And these are like hospitals that have these surgery centers. Anyways, it seemed like it wasn't a priority for me to be accepted to get a room. So they were having trouble getting me in a room. And then I said, well, you know what? I said, this system is kind of broken because I wasn't a patient of the other hospital where they had the surgery centers. They weren't, allowing me to get a bed right away. So again, it was like 12 hours later. And I told them, I go, look, I'm going to just drive to one of those hospitals. I'm going to drive there, and then I'm going to check in there, and then I'm their patient, and they're going to have to accept me. And the doctors acknowledged it. They said, yeah, that would happen, but we don't recommend you leaving because obviously they don't want me to die on the way, right? So they were trying to talk me out of it, and they said, hey, let's give us another chance, give us an hour, and let's, this was about 10 hours in. They said, give us an hour, and we'll see if we can get a bed. So they said, they made some calls, and they did have a possible room, a guaranteed, quote unquote, guaranteed room at the University of San Francisco. And I wasn't real comfortable with that because they were talking, the cardiologist at that hospital was talking about, he actually gave me priority lists of the doctors or surgeons he trusted, and they were in Sacramento and Yuba County. And so when they mentioned University of San Francisco Medical Center, I thought, well, that's not even on his list, because he had gave me like 3 or 4 different surgeons that he really recommended, and this wasn't on his list, so I wasn't real comfortable with that. I'm like, nah, I don't think so. And I was thinking of just driving to Sacramento area or whatever to get into a hospital there and start the whole process as their patient. And so they said, okay, well, let's, so I kind of refused that one. Then I said, well, I'm going to probably just take off then. And they're like, oh no, give us another hour. Let's try again and see if we can get another hospital or surgery center that, the surgeons that are recommended by our cardiologist. So I said, okay, well, let's do another hour. If it doesn't work out this time, I'm actually taking off. All right. And so what I did was I waited about an hour. They actually found another bed, and it was at one of those, I think it was in Yuba County, where they found a bed available at one of the surgery centers that had the doctors that the cardiologist recommended, the surgeons that he had recommended. And so I said, awesome. I said, when's it available? They go, they can guarantee you a bed at 9 a.m. in the morning. And so they were thinking about flying me out, but they decided, well, 9 in the morning, we can drive you down, and get you checked in at 9. You're guaranteed a bed. And I said, okay, let's do that then. And so that was the plan. But what I did was right after that, I prayed. I said, because I just had this sense that I was supposed to drive to a hospital. For some reason, that's the sense I had. But obviously, they didn't want me to do that because of the potential of me actually passing away while I was driving. And so I prayed. I said, Lord, if you want me to go to a different hospital, and I really felt like he wanted me to drive to Southern California. Where I kind of felt there was better surgeons and surgery centers in Southern California. So anyways, I prayed this prayer, and within 15 minutes of that prayer, the medical staff came back at that hospital and said, I can't believe it. They gave away your guaranteed bed. And so, and that's what I prayed. I said, Lord, if you want me to go to Southern California to check in at a hospital down there, I said, take this guaranteed bed away. And that's what happened. Within 15 minutes, they came back and said, I can't believe it. They gave away your guaranteed bed. And I go, okay, well, there you go. I go, like I said, I'm going to take off. And obviously after going through that twice, they said, okay, well, all right, but you got to sign this waiver, right? So I got to sign the waiver that they're not responsible if anything happens to me, when I leave the hospital. So I did. So I left the hospital. I took off, and I actually drove to Southern California and went to a hospital down there and checked in. And within a couple hours, I had a bed, and they were saying the same things. And I gave them the information from the last hospital, and so they put me through tests as well, and they determined the same thing. And they wanted to get me up into surgery again right away. So they're like, hey, let's get you going here. Well, my mom was with me, and she had said, hey, I'm going to get you something to eat. I'm like, I don't know if I should eat, because maybe they don't need me to eat, because I know that surgery procedures, most of the time, they don't want you to eat before you have any surgery. But she kept on, saying, no, I want you to eat. So I said, okay, you know what, let me just eat. I've been here sitting for a few hours, so, and I was hungry. So I went ahead and ate. Well, they came back and said, hey, did you eat? And I said, yeah, I did. And they go, oh man, then we can't take you up. So it stopped me from actually moving forward with this plan of surgery or whatever, because they were going to move me up to the heart floor and then get me prepped for surgery. That was kind of the plan. And then since I ate, they couldn't do it. So they said, okay, we'll do this. We'll start working on this in the morning. So they gave me a bed in the ER, but in the back room, in the back area there where I actually had a room. And so I was by myself. And then they started, coming in and all that. And again, they had a little bit of time to look at the tests and kind of determine in the blood and all that. And they determined, hey, you know what? I think this is going to be the plan. We are going to not do surgery right away because of the bacteria, because they did some other procedures where they stuck a camera down my throat and all that. And they actually saw the mass, on the echocardiogram. And when they stuck that camera down my throat, they took pictures of the mass that was on my valves. And so they determined, yep, your valves are failing, you heart failure. And so we have to do surgery. However, because there's potential for bacteria to still be in your body somewhere, they didn't want to do the surgery, and replace the valves. And then after that, the bacteria is still in there somewhere, and then it attaches again to the valves again, the new valves. So instead of having surgery, what they determined was, we're going to put you on a program of daily antibiotic program. So it was daily infusions. And so they basically put what's called a PICC line, PICC. Don't even know what it stands for, but it's basically a line that goes from your upper arm all the way to your heart. And so you get these antibiotics deposited directly into your vein and goes right to your heart. So that's a direct line for medication, for my case, to the heart. So they inserted that, and that was a little bit horrible because they had problems because I didn't have a normal vein path, I guess. So normally it goes up your upper arm, it goes in there, it goes in a vein there, and then it drops 90 degrees at your shoulder, and then it kind of turns towards your heart, and that's where the normal PICC line goes. Well, the problem was that I didn't have a 90-degree drop at my shoulder. What I had was it went up and then over again 90 degrees, and then up again and over again 90 degrees, and then it dropped. So they could not get the PICC line in. This is like a 15-minute procedure, 20-minute procedure, and they could not get it in, and it took over an hour to get it in. So it's only a local anesthesia. So that did not work out well, because halfway through the procedure, I was feeling everything. And I was like, this is wrong. I could feel them pushing it in and hitting basically my armpit, and they couldn't get it to go up because that isn't the normal vein path, because obviously I'm different that way. And so it was making it difficult for them, and they were like grinding it, and I could feel it all. Anyways, it was a tough little thing that was supposed to only take 15 minutes, and it took over an hour to get in, and they were working, and I felt all of it. So that kind of sucked. But anyways, got through that, and they finally got it in. Everything looked real good and all that. And so I started that antibiotic program in the hospital. So I was in the hospital probably for like over a week. I know it was over a week, and I was taking all these antibiotics, and so I called it my prison cell. So I was doing my prison workouts, well, until the PICC line was put in. Then I couldn't do any more because you can't lift over 10 pounds, and so you can't do too much arm work because the PICC line will work itself out of your arm, and they don't want that. So obviously I had to stop the exercising and moving around with my arm and all that. But anyways, so they started this antibiotic program, and as they were doing the program, they were infusing 2 different types of antibiotics, and one of them was working fine. No problem. The second one, I didn't realize this till later, probably like 7 days later, but I was allergic to it, but I didn't know that. But what was happening was I'd get infused with this antibiotic. It was called daptomycin. That's one of the names of it. Anyways, I'm getting this infusion daily, and then I'm noticing I'm getting fevers. Every night I'm getting a fever ever since this happened, but I didn't make the connection. The hospital staff didn't make any connection to it. They just, because obviously fevers can happen with infections and all that stuff. That's normal. So they didn't think too much of it, but it was happening every night, late at night, and it'd go for about 3 hours. They'd give me Tylenol, and it'd break after 3 hours, which was a little bit weird too, because that was a little bit longer than it should have been taking. So every night this was happening. So 3 days in the hospital. Then I get released. They release me, and then the fevers started getting longer. Like it was going 24 hours. These fevers were going 24 hours, and I was eating up Tylenol and Motrin just to function. And that was what was a little bit weird to me, was that the fever got worse, and then I had to take all this over-the-counter stuff just to keep it from messing me up, because the fever was was getting to like 102, over 102, and I was laying in bed all the time. I actually felt sickly, and I felt wrong. It didn't feel right. I said, no, this can't be right. So I started thinking back. I said, when did these fevers start? And I remember it started the day I received the daptomycin, the first infusion in the hospital. And now I'm out of the hospital, but I got this PICC line inserted in my arm, and I'm actually having daily infusions. I'm going to the infusion center every day to get these infusions. And one of the antibiotics didn't have a problem with. It was this daptomycin, and I started thinking, you know what? I think it's the dapto. And so I told them, look, I'm not taking this dapto anymore. I think it's causing problems. And they're like, what? So it was a first for the infusion center. The infusion center said, like, we've never experienced anyone having an allergic reaction to daptomycin. It's been such a standard, go-to antibiotic, and because it didn't have any side effects or it didn't affect people. But I was adamant that it was affecting me, and the fevers I was having and the stuff I had to go through, I thought, this is not right. And I didn't feel right. And so I refused the daptomycin, and it just so happened I actually had a training that I didn't cancel, and I had to actually do it. And so the doctor prescribed a antibiotic, like an oral, because I wasn't going to be here for the daily infusions. So I went up and did the training. It was a 3-day training, and I was teaching the classes, and so I was taking this the pills, and I did not have a fever that whole time. So then I knew, I'm like, oh, it's the daptomycin. I'm allergic to it. So anyways, but I did actually catch pneumonia, which was weird because they said, how could you get pneumonia while you're on an antibiotic program? So again, another weird thing happened. But anyways, so I came back and I told them it was the daptomycin that was causing the fevers. And I had some problems with my stomach too. So I wasn't eating. I lost a bunch of double digits weight. I lost weight because I wasn't eating, because it affected my stomach. It affected my, the fevers. So I just was losing weight. And so I wasn't feeling right. But anyways, so I said, yeah, it's the daptomycin. So we stopped taking that, and the doctor looked for something else to prescribe me. So she prescribed me another oral pill to take with my daily infusions. So anyways, that's the program I've been on. Anyways, that's kind of the whole backstory of what had happened. I had, because it's a little bit different now, but heart failure, 2 failing valves, failing so bad that there was a bunch of backflow that's happening in my heart. And so that is the medical emergency that happened. And that's why I entitled this episode Hospital Chronicles. Now, this is all the whole backstory of what happened. That's why I kind of disappeared for the last 3 weeks. I was in the hospital. I couldn't do any episodes. I couldn't even let you know what was kind of going on, because I do all my stuff recorded, and then I edit, and then I post it up there. So I couldn't do any of that because of everything that was going on. So again, I apologize that I didn't inform you guys about the stoppage, and it was kind of an abrupt change in the program here. And I know that maybe I've lost some listeners, on the radio station, on the podcast. I may have lost some listeners, because obviously when you don't know what's going on and nothing is said after 3 weeks, you go, what the heck is going on here? And then you kind of just do your own thing, right? Because obviously you can't count on the episode to be there again. So I apologize that this whole thing kind of went down and how it happened and all that. But obviously I got to prioritize my health first, and that's what I'm worried about. And so there's some other things that happen. And so I'm going to do a part 2 on the Hospital Chronicles, and I'm going to go over the stuff that God has been doing, because I want to talk about something, because I think it's important to talk about, because whenever things happen in our lives and it appears to be negative, like obviously heart failure is bad, right? That's what it appears, that heart failure is bad. But there's some things that happened that I'm looking at this going, wait a minute, this is actually a blessing. Some of these things that are happening is God breathed. Like I believe that God is in this and doing something, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually a blessing. It's like a different path or a different experience He wants me to experience. And some of the things that have been happening, I could see His hand totally in this thing. I could totally see Him working some things in this new path that I'm on. And there's some things, my mindset has changed a little bit on how God does things and why He does things and the sovereignty of God. And also something that also has changed is my gratefulness. There has been some total mindset shift in terms of being grateful. I'm starting to understand grace. I'm starting to understand mercy. Now, I've understood it before, God's grace and God's mercy, but now it's a different level of understanding. And now I'm also attaching it to how grateful I am for the things that have happened, even though it may appear and people may think, no, that's a bad thing. I don't think that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk in the next episode. I'm going to really talk about the stuff God is doing. And I've actually got some stories from multiple people that I have crossed paths with because of this thing that's happened. And God has been involved in these conversations that I've had with people. And I'm talking dozens of people. And I'm talking people of science, people that don't necessarily put their faith in God, but some things have been happening and God has been in this. God has been doing some stuff. So, and I'm also going to give you an update on this heart failure thing. I'm going to give you an update on not only spiritually what God's been doing and mentally what God's been doing in my life, but also the physical things that He's been doing. Something that I've noticed, that the doctors have noticed, and some things that have changed in the diagnosis. And so I'm going to give you an update on that the next time in the next episode that is going to give you insight on what God is doing and why I have a mindset of this is a blessing, not a curse. This is God, not the devil. This is something that God is doing because He wants me to see things differently. He wants me to interact with people differently. And He's given me the opportunity to totally bless others and to totally to get blessing in this circumstance that just totally seems opposite of a blessing. So I'm going to get into that the next episode. So this is Hospital Chronicles Part 1, and then next time will be Hospital Chronicles Part 2. So thanks for coming back. Thanks for listening in. I'm Clint Armitage. This is the Radio Coffee House, and I'll see you next time. God bless. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Radio Coffee House Show, where we're all about Jesus, coffee, and radio. We'll see you next time.